Welcome to Go Get Great, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious small business owners. I'm your host, Brittany, owner of Brittany Miller Socials and mother of 3. Go Get Great is all about helping you make life and business work together. You'll learn about the fumbles that helped get me and my guests to where we are today so you don't have to make them. So come join the journey with Go Get Great. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Go Get Great podcast. I am back today with a special guest, Lauren Smit. She is a business mindset coach helping women in service-based businesses attract quality clients so that they can build a fulfilled life with family and freedom, which is exactly what I know most of us are looking for. So before starting this, she was in the brand and marketing industry for over 8 years and found her passion for coaching, specifically mindset coaching, in 2020. She realized how much more of an impact she can make when giving women the tools to build a thriving, successful business where they have time to spend with family, but still absolutely love what they do, which is an amazing mission. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on the podcast today. So she's joining us to talk about the 5 different types of imposter syndrome and how it affects us in business and in life. So I know that imposter syndrome is something that really hits home for me. It's something that I struggle with in my business. And I know that a lot of the women that I talk to, probably a lot of you listening, are also struggling with this as well. Now, that being said, this episode is just as applicable for men, if there are men listening, because Lauren has some absolutely fabulous tips to help you identify and overcome the different types of imposter syndrome that you're facing. And I was just mind blown that there were 5 different types. I thought imposter syndrome was just like one thing. So you are going to learn so much in this episode. I cannot wait to get started. So without further ado, welcome, Lauren. All right. So good morning and welcome to the Go Get Great podcast, Lauren. I'm so excited to have you here today. Before we dive in, I'd really love for you to introduce yourself in your own words so that our audience gets to know you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, I'm Lauren Smit. I'm a marketing coach for female entrepreneurs, and I really dig into the mindset piece of your business so that your marketing flows better and really helps you attract quality clients.
And I'm so excited for today's topic because I know that I'm not the only one that has experienced imposter syndrome. Every time I talk to female entrepreneurs, it's like a reoccurring theme for us, but we don't always know that. I didn't know that there were actually 5 different types of imposter syndrome, which is what Lauren's going to be sharing today. So I'm very excited for that. But before we dive into that specifically, you were actually in branding and marketing for 8 years. How did you transition from branding and marketing over to like mindset coaching?
Yeah, so I was doing done for you branding and some marketing strategy. And I was in that since 2011, 2012. And so I started losing a little bit of the enjoyment of the business and I started exploring what I enjoyed more and things like that. At the same time, I sort of helped my sister in her school with the kids. And the thing that I just loved the most with my clients and the kids and everything was like problem solving and helping them see their own mindset and how things are happening for them. And then also some mentoring with that as well. But also just like my journey with coaching, because I got a coach and it blew my mind. I absolutely love it. And so when I was investigating like how to make my business more fun and things like that, I just found the love for coaching and mindset work and how much that makes a bigger impact on your marketing and your business than just the design or the strategy and the things like that. So that's kind of how they got together.
Makes sense. So imposter syndrome specifically is often a very personal topic. Is this something that you've faced yourself in your business?
Yes, definitely. Once I learned about the different types, I actually realized it came from my childhood. And I will share with you the specific one I experienced, but basically things were very easy for me when I was younger, and then it got harder for me to do. And so there was like, I went to a bigger school, there was more competition. And instead of like taking on that challenge, I kind of hid away and sort of just stayed where I was. I was happy with like 70%, and I was happy with like being in the number one and the second team of tennis or whatever. Whereas in my
Mhm.
small town, I was good because there wasn't a lot of competition. It wasn't hard for me to be very good. So imposter syndrome actually came from then, and
Hmm.
then into my designing business, and I still manage it now as a coach and helping my clients as well, because it's not just something that we can sort of turn off or
Mhm.
just, it's not like a headache. You can just take a painkiller and then it's gone type of thing.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, I agree. It would make everything so much easier.
Mhm.
Um, and so also what happens with imposter syndrome and is that in different situations, you might experience a different type of imposter syndrome. So there's
Okay.
nothing wrong with you if you have experienced all five, or if a new one pops up with a new scenario that you've never found yourself in. So you are totally normal of that if you're experiencing that.
Okay. That is good to
Yeah.
know. So maybe we should talk about what the five types of imposter syndrome actually are.
Yes, yeah, that would be helpful. Hey, so firstly, like I mentioned, there's nothing wrong with you if you experience all five or just one of them. The first one is the perfectionist. So the perfectionist is exactly what it says. You set very high standards for yourself. If you don't meet those expectations, you feel like a failure, and they're usually way too high for you to even, kind of reach that, because we set the bar so much higher for ourselves than anyone else.
Hmm.
So you're a perfectionist, and you only feel good enough when you feel like everything's going to be perfect. The second one is the superwoman or man. So you push yourself harder than anyone else does. You're like on 24/7. You'll answer emails or calls or clients out of working hours. It's kind of like you're trying to be present with maybe your kids or your family or an activity, but you just cannot stop thinking about work. That's
Mm.
kind of also one of the ways you know that you're experiencing this. And the third one is the natural genius. This is the one that I was referencing.
Mm.
It's where you previously found things naturally easy to do. So, like perhaps school wasn't that hard, perhaps you were good at sport, or whatever you sort of tried, it wasn't hard. And now, when you do fail, you feel like a complete failure, you don't feel good enough. And so you don't want to take on challenges because you want to
Mhm.
get it right on the first try. This one is kind of a bit of a paralysis imposter syndrome. So if you find yourself not taking action, then this one might be the one that you're experiencing.
Mhm.
And then the fourth one is the soloist. So the soloist feels like if they have to ask for help, they are failing, they're not good enough, so they have to do everything on their own. This usually happens when we have like a team in our business and you are bottlenecking what other people should or could be doing because you feel like you need to be doing it, and you kind of burn yourself out because you're not delegating those tasks, because you have this like worry that if you don't do it, you're not good enough. And then the
Mm.
fifth one is the expert. So the expert feels like they need to have all of the certifications and all of the knowledge to be good enough. They are worried about looking stupid when they ask or answer questions. They feel like they need to tick 100% of the boxes before they can, for example, apply to a job, or if a client reaches out and says they need X, Y, and Z, and you just don't have one of those things, you don't offer to help.
Mhm.
And so you miss out on a lot of opportunities because you have this fixation on trying to get all the certifications and all the knowledge. One of the ways is of knowing if you have the expert imposter syndrome is if you are getting certification after certification without implementation. And also if you are um, leaving opportunities on the table. Oh, sorry. Um, I lost a bit of a train of thought there, sorry. But if you're trying to get all the certifications, or if you are writing social media content and then you want to go and do research before you're writing. So you're
Mm.
worried about not sounding clever enough or intelligent enough, and you just need to double check that what you're saying is 100% correct. And you won't say anything wrong or stupid. So those are the 5 different types.
Okay. So a quick rundown again. Perfectionist. What was the second one?
Superwoman or
Okay.
man, the natural genius,
Mm-hmm.
the soloist, and the expert.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely check several of those boxes.
Same.
So I was going to ask how women can identify what type of imposter syndrome they have, but I think it's pretty obvious. We know. But are there like
Yes.
actual things that if we're not sure that we could have like a friend or family member kind of go, here's some of the criteria. Do I check these boxes? Is that like a thing?
I think actually we could do it on our own once you sort of know um, the different types. There
Hmm.
are some questions you could ask yourself, and through journaling and answering those questions, you might notice which one is holding you back. So, a good one is to ask yourself if nothing, or firstly, ask yourself, um, how am I holding myself back?
Mm.
So, for example, like I know I should be just posting my content, or I know I should be, and posting my content could be the perfectionist or the expert, where like you're trying to get your graphics perfect, you're trying to get your post perfect, you're not posting it,
Hmm.
or the expert where you're like trying to make it sound like an expert before you post it.
Hmm.
Another one could be like, I'm finding it hard to take time off, or
Mm.
I know I need to be resting, but I just feel like I can't be resting.
Mm.
And another one is, I know I should be delegating or asking for help, even if that's like in your personal life, so that you can, succeed in your business. You know that you should be asking for help or delegating, and you don't. So then it's the soloist.
Mm.
And if you are like, I am not, I'm holding myself back because I'm not putting myself out there, I'm not trying new things, I'm not taking on this thing as a challenge because I'm scared I fail, then you also know that you have the natural genius. And again, if you have all 5, like there's nothing wrong wrong with you. So exploring that question is very helpful. And then another way to then start moving forward is asking yourself, like, what would you do if nothing could go wrong, right? If there was like
Mm.
no consequence, if there was like um no one judging you, no one like being all mean or whatever, um, rejection, all of those things. If nothing could go wrong, what would you be doing? And so then it helps you to sort of take small steps in the direction of showing yourself also like that you are safe to do these things. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to take very small steps, sometimes we can take bigger steps. But a big part of overcoming and managing imposter syndrome is showing your brain the evidence that you are good enough. So
Mm.
that is really, really helpful.
Okay. Well, that was actually my next question. So, what strategies can we implement to help us overcome these different types of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so journaling is one that's kind of over the whole range that will be very, very helpful. There are sort of specific ones to the specific imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
but the first thing you can do is journal and ask yourself these questions and really just mirror back what's happening in your mind. It is such a beautiful thing to do and to realize, and just become curious about why you're thinking that and what's happening there. The next one is to have a win file or folder on your desktop
Mm.
or on your phone or in a journal. This one is also helps you across the board, where you're just showing yourself that you are good enough. So testimonials, compliments, client wins, or your own personal wins. It could be even if you're starting out and you're like helping your mom and she got results, or whatever the
Mhm.
situation is, you can really do anything to show yourself that you are good enough. Another piece that I like to add to this win file, because a lot of people talk about it, is when you receive that compliment or you receive that testimonial and it really makes you feel warm and excited and you know really good about where you are at. And then we
Mhm.
like to go and jump to, okay, what's next? What can I improve? Where's the problem? And we try and solve that problem, right? So what I like to do is practice that um, good feeling every time I read it. So try and read it maybe once a week. When you read that testimonial or that compliment or whatever it is, try and sit in that feeling for as long as you can. Sometimes it will be 5 seconds. The more you practice it, the longer you'll be able to do it, because that energy and that feeling that you create in your body helps you to feel it more and to believe it more. Because if you can't
Oh.
feel the compliment in your body, you're going to be like, oh yeah, but they complimented me, but I still don't see how how I'm good enough at this or whatever. So I
Yep.
like to add that to the win file. And would you like me to add a couple of extra ones to the specific
Yeah,
imposter
please.
syndromes? So with a perfectionist, you want to lift the pedal and you want to redefine perfection for yourself.
Mhm.
So because we set the bar really, really high, lower the bar and be like, what is actually realistic? If I was speaking to my best friend, like what would I be expecting of them? And shift that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the superwoman as well, lift the pedal, slow down a bit, and practice kind of being more present when you're not at your work or when you're not working. So it might be hard at first because you feel like clients might leave or they're going to hate you or whatever the situation is if you don't help them right away. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, like we can't take our brain from like that fear to not having that fear at all. So you just want to take small steps and be like, see, 10 minutes in, I'm trying to be really present with my kids or my family.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is fine. My business hasn't burnt down, type of thing. So just slowing down. With a natural genius is again like doing the opposite. So understanding that failure is actually never failure. Like I think we have a wrong perspective around failure in society,
Mm-hmm.
and that what it really is lessons. And the more lessons we can learn, the more takeaways we can get from the actions that we take, the faster we can grow and do those things. So also like redefining what it looks like to fail and then taking small steps in the direction that you've been trying to, but you've been fearing the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
The soloist again is asking for help. So it could also just be like asking somebody to take care of the kids for a little bit or somebody to um, give you some advice or something like that. It can just like take some steps to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And then the expert is really helpful if you have a mentor or a coach or someone to help you. That is kind of where you can go to your family and be like, I want to do another certification because I feel like I'm not good enough. Do you think that is a good idea? Because sometimes, sort of certifications are valid and they're helpful and things like that, but it doesn't help you have like your whole wall full of certifications, but you're not actually like helping anyone with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are kind of little steps that you can take with each of them that could be very helpful.
I like that. That is very helpful. Now, I'm curious, does imposter syndrome affect us differently in our personal life versus in our business?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I don't think necessarily. I think the kind of the symptoms of imposter syndrome is like people pleasing, paralysis. And so it might just be that you're doing things a little bit differently in your business versus your personal life. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're people pleasing in your personal life, you're probably doing it in your business as well. Um, and if you're kind of worried about what people are thinking of you, it kind of overlaps there from the personal to the professional piece, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really say that they would be completely different, but maybe the actions you're taking are slightly different.
Okay, interesting. Now, I'm not sure if you're a mom, I didn't ask, but is mom
I
guilt
am.
similar to imposter syndrome? Like, is that one of the, does it fall under one of those five categories, or is it something separate?
Oh, hmm. I that is a very interesting question. I do have kids. I have a 5-year-old boy and a 1.5-year-old girl,
Aw.
and mom guilt is so so
Mm-hmm.
real. Yeah. And I don't think mom guilt and imposter syndrome are really the same thing
Okay.
because I think you have where imposter syndrome is like a lack of confidence and feeling like a fraud and
Mhm.
like, you know, the way that you behave. And so you might like be people pleasing towards your kids or things like that because you're worried about what they'll think of you as a mother. But
Mhm.
I think with a mom guilt, that's just a different level of like worry in terms of like, am I doing a great job? Like, are they going to
Mhm.
be decent human beings when they're big?
Mhm.
But this could be something that one discusses more in depth. Do you think that what I have shared kind of relates to the mom guilt?
I was kind of wondering, like, I feel like for me specifically, like, I feel a lot of mom guilt because I suffer from, well, perfectionist, superwoman, and probably also expert as well. So for me, my mom guilt stems from, am I spending enough time with my kids and not focusing too much on my business, which is all about being able to like turn my mind off? Because even if I'm not working, my brain is still thinking about my business because of those imposter syndrome things that I'm dealing with. So my mom guilt stems a lot from that. Like, even though I'm there, am I really present? Am I doing enough as a mom? Or am I just basically a CEO and like a zombie that is just in the room with my kids?
Yeah, that's interesting because I definitely understand that and experience that too, where you're just like, you feel like you have seen them, but have you really like, do they feel the love and were
Mhm.
you present? Did you listen type of thing? So I do understand that. And I do see how they could overlap and how that could stem from that. But I don't necessarily see that guilt is a big thing when I'm dealing with imposter syndrome in my clients.
Okay.
So, what I would more work with is the fear around things like fear of taking action, fear of speaking up, fear of taking time off, um, fear of, not answering clients. So there's a lot of fear happening there, and then lack of confidence. So devaluing themselves, not putting themselves first. And in that regard, like when it comes to kids, as mothers, we're definitely not putting ourselves first. And I think it takes some time to start taking action to put ourselves first. And yeah, so guilt is a big thing for us there.
Hmm.
So that's a very interesting question, and I think it's something one could explore more. But there's definitely overlap, but I think the guilt part is just um, not really in the professional piece. They
Hmm.
might feel guilty that they're not that they could have done better with a client or could have like marketed themselves better or things like that. But I haven't specifically dealt with guilt as much as I've dealt with fear when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. So, what else do we need to know about imposter syndrome and how we can kind of mitigate that? Because it is often something that stands in the way of women in business between taking something that is doing really well and then growing it to something bigger and better, which often many of us have goals for. But I think there's, like you said, that big fear piece, and we just get stuck here. So, how do we move closer to our goals while dealing with all of the imposter syndrome things that we're facing?
Yes, I think it's just really detangling those like limiting beliefs and why we have that fear. So becoming curious as to why you worry that a client might think this, or what will happen if you say something now and then change your mind about what you said like a couple months or years down the line, right?
Mhm.
And so when we get to investigate and we become curious about those things, we can understand that it's not actually an actual threat most of the time. It's just a
Mhm.
made up thing that our brain is trying to keep us safe because us trying to move forward and reach our goals is an uncertain thing, right? We
Mhm.
don't like uncertainty. Our brain wants to keep us in the place where it's really safe and we know what's happening, even if it's not where we want to be. We don't want to be in this financial position. We don't want to struggle with getting clients or whatever, but our brain wants to keep us there because they know what it's like, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we get to also just like thank our brain for trying to keep us safe and be like, okay, I can explore this and see how I can take on this challenge and take these steps slowly by and show my brain the evidence that it's safe to do so. So there's a lot of things, like a lot of the tools that I mentioned earlier will be very helpful in detangling all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then just understanding where the fear stems from. So, for example, if you're worried about what people are going to say and think that you're stupid, can you actually do anything about what people think about you, right?
No.
We can't. It's something I struggle with a lot as
Mm-hmm.
well. It's like I worry that people are going to think this if I say that, or I'm trying to manage their emotions. And I cannot do that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, somebody could, I could be the most intelligent person, know all of the answers, all of those things, and somebody will still think that I am ridiculous or whatever the situation is. And then just realizing that that is their perception and their thoughts, and it has nothing to do with you. So I
Mm.
think a lot of mindset work is so valuable when we know that there's something blocking us from reaching the goal that we should have maybe already reached, or
Mhm.
yeah, when we're just trying to up level and things like that.
That makes sense. So, a question for you. So, fear of failure, we've kind of talked a little bit about, it falls into those imposter syndrome categories. What about fear of success? Where does that fit in?
Yeah, I would say that's actually part of the natural genius imposter
Oh,
syndrome,
okay.
because you are technically, oh, okay. So if we take fear of success, right, we're looking at you're perhaps worried that you can't handle all these clients, or you fear that you can't manage all the money you'll be making because previously you might have maybe made an investment that wasn't that great or something like that, right? And so we don't actually fear the success, we fear that we can't handle it that much.
Mm,
I
okay.
would say. So maybe it's not necessarily the natural genius one, because the natural genius one, we fear we're going to fail. And
Hmm.
so we might self-sabotage ourselves in failing anyway because we don't take
Hmm.
the steps to do it,
Right.
right? So fear of success, I think, would just come from like the lack of confidence that you have. So not feeling good enough to have that success and to manage those clients. We
Hmm.
also like to go from we're busy getting clients, we're managing our schedule, and then we're like, if we're successful, we imagine like the busiest schedule and
Yeah.
the craziest things, right? And
Hmm.
so as we're building our business, we get to implement steps and strategies and help as we grow, right? Because we
Hmm.
don't actually, or very few people go from like zero to too many clients and too much money. And
True.
so we get to just like take a deep breath and go, okay, I'm feeling worried about the future, and my
Hmm.
brain is telling me it's going to be too hard and too many things to manage,
Hmm.
but I get to take it step by step. So right now I can manage this. Maybe 2 or 3 clients in, I will need to hire some help or get extra childcare or whatever the situation is. And so you, I think we just need to calm our brains down and be like, this big picture that we see is super overwhelming because of where we are and the lack of maybe support that we have. And
Mm.
so we get to take it step by step and then build in the support as we carry on and go along to get that successful, to get to that place. So
Yes.
so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it does, I think. It's just all about taking those little steps to kind of basically, like you said, build your confidence along the way to be like, I can handle this, you know. As much as, everyone wants that overnight success in that fully booked calendar, it's not usually realistic. So you have the time and the capacity to put those things in place as you go, even though our brains obviously are telling us that's not the case. It really is. So just kind of being mindful of that, I think that's really big. Now, I'm curious if you have any book recommendations or tools that you usually recommend for your clients that can kind of help support some of this. So I know journaling works really well, but it's not necessarily the complete picture.
Yeah, so these 5 types of imposter syndrome is the research done by Valerie Young. You're welcome to go and look at her website. But also the piece where I mentioned you do the win file and you also try and feel that win in your body. I highly recommend reading the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Okay.
He really speaks about how we self-sabotage, and instead of just going to the next problem and feeling like the penny's going to drop now, everything's going so well, or things are going well in this area and then that area doesn't go well. He speaks about how you can shift that and learn to sit in the success or the celebrations that you are currently experiencing and create more and more of those. So that is very,
Okay.
very helpful. I also do have a PDF about the 5 different types of imposter syndrome and like the symptoms you might be experiencing, and then some tools that will help you to take the next step to start managing it.
Amazing. Do I have a link for that? Because I'll definitely put that in the show notes.
I will make sure you have it
Okay.
if you don't.
Perfect. So I'm curious from like a mindset perspective and from dealing with imposter syndrome as a mom and a business owner, what tips do you have for helping balance life and business to try and keep things at bay?
Yes, I think just again being conscious about where you feel like the balance is not happening, like where you should be asking for more help in terms of like childcare so that you can look at your business. And then also,
Mhm.
I think a big part of it is like looking at your priorities. Our kids
Mm.
are obviously a big priority, and we want to give them all of the attention and the love and things like that. But then also just realizing what setting time out to work on your business means for your family and
Mhm.
for more time or more flexibility with your kids, right?
Mhm.
How being able to put down your business and your work and be really present with your kids, like how valuable that is for them as well. And so working on your imposter syndrome and becoming conscious and understanding where you lack some balance helps you
Mm.
to become curious and then also take steps in those areas, because a lot of times like I've struggled to ask my husband for help because I feel like I should be taking on help, and so I get to
Yeah.
investigate that and become curious and think like, where does that come from? He loves spending time with the kids, right? He loves supporting me and things like that. So you just get to question and investigate and have a look at that. I think also another thing is that we are very hard on ourselves if
Mhm.
we like drop the ball, right? And so I often say like I've fallen off the wagon and I'm not able to do all these things. But one of my clients who's a health coach, she likes to reference the dial. So instead of thinking
Oh.
of like you either on the wagon or off the wagon, she thinks of it like you either dialed up or dialed down. And sometimes
Mm.
dialing up and down has to happen to create a little bit of balance. So sometimes you're a little bit dialed up with your business and dialed down with your family for this period. Maybe you're launching,
Mm.
maybe
Mhm.
it's just a busy season for you. And then it's again dialed down or dialed up with life and kids and things happening. So which means we're not off the wagon and we have to like drag ourselves back to get back on it. We're just doing less and doing more at different times. And I think that is a more realistic way to look at balance, because there is definitely no right way to balance things. And it's very hard as a mom. So I think we get to just look at what that looks like for ourselves and then
Mhm.
determine that for ourselves.
I like that. I like that a lot. The dial makes a lot of sense too. And I think I like that reference better. Everyone's like, oh, it's a season. And I was like, yeah, but seasons feel so long, and I don't want to ignore my children for like an entire season.
Yeah,
That's probably not going to
that
win
makes
me
sense.
any Mom of the Year awards. But
Yeah.
a dial you can change more regularly than that. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Now you said
Yeah,
something
because it's
else. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry. Yeah, because it's not like you're not spending any time with them when there's the season, right? So we get to see like there is these pockets of time that we spend with them or whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now you said something earlier about how we need to really work on reframing failure, which is something that I have been learning the hard way since starting my business. And I'm, failing forward, and every failure gets me closer to success, quote unquote. Probably should redefine success while I'm at it. But I'm curious what the
Yes.
biggest failure is that you've had, failure in quotes, in your business, and kind of what you learned from it.
Yeah, so recently or end of last year, I had a client ghost me,
Hmm.
which was so hard for me.
Yeah.
I really struggled and was a big knock for me. I felt like a failure. All of the imposter syndrome came back, like all of those things. But it
Mhm.
was a big, big lesson for me and really, really needed. My people pleasing was coming through in instead of like coaching on the overwhelm that she was experiencing, I was trying to help manage her overwhelm, which
Mm.
just didn't help because when we have thoughts about overwhelm, or we have thoughts about all of the things that we have to do, right? And
Mhm.
so that creates overwhelm.
Yep.
So instead of coaching on that, I was coaching on it, but I was also like booking her calls for her and trying to manage things. And she wasn't showing up to the calls 100% and things like that. And so I took full responsibility of like where I could have improved and can improve with my next clients. So that was probably like one of the biggest failures I would say I had. And it
Mhm.
really gave me a knock, but it made me look at like where do I want to be more authentic and really push myself to help people better or women better, and how can I go about this differently now that I see what enabling has caused, instead of empowering her, it has disempowered her, right? And disempowered myself as well. And so there's definitely no place for people pleasing in business. I know it's very hard, but we end up just disappointing ourselves and we disappoint our clients because they don't get the results that they perhaps were seeking, and we become resentful because of it. And it's just really a very difficult cycle to break, but it's so helpful when we can try and break that. So that would probably be my my toughest time.
I think, yeah, definitely dealing with clients is like a whole thing to try and learn to not take
Yeah.
on, their expectations of success. And that's something that I guess I've been struggling with lately too, although I hadn't really processed it until we were in the middle of this conversation. But I recently launched one of my first courses, and I had some people register, and it was great. And it was kind of like a 50-50 split between people that finished the course and people that didn't. And I feel like compelled and responsible to help that other 50% get through the course. But at the same time, I also know that I should probably just like let it go because I cannot force people to do the
Yeah.
work. And I was actually talking to my copywriter about that today because I'm working on another course. And she's like, oh, I want to put a guarantee on the page, like if people aren't satisfied or whatever. And I was like, you know what? No, I don't want to do that because I know that I'm going to deliver an absolutely amazing course and people will get great
Yeah.
results. And if they don't get great results and they're not happy, it's not on me, it's on them
Yeah.
because they haven't done the work. And it feels really
Yeah.
weird to kind of be in that position where I'm like, no, it's not me, it's them. So that's their
Yeah.
problem. Because from a customer service perspective, like I know that guarantees are huge and everyone wants those, but I don't know. I'm feeling good about my decision, at least for today anyway.
That feels so good because it comes from the intention behind it, right? you could,
Mhm.
the intention behind it is that I believe in my product 100%. And like, I know that if you do the work, you're going to get amazing results. So you don't need a guarantee. And also you don't need a guarantee because the day you commit, you know you're committing to the whole thing.
Mhm.
Whereas if the no guarantee came from, oh, I don't think my course is that great, and like, what if they don't get results or they hate me or whatever, that comes from a different energy, right? And so
Mhm.
then the people will be skeptical in general. And that's also kind of part of the marketing piece that I help my clients with, which I think it's so good when you can step into that decision that you've made and just be
Mhm.
like, this is for the people who want it. And those people who aren't ready yet, maybe they'll be ready later or something like that. I love
Mhm.
that so much.
Yeah, that's true. It's all about being willing to take action. And I've been guilty of this too. Is like I've registered for courses and there probably are guarantees and I could maybe get my money back, but like I know it's on me that I didn't do the work. I didn't show up fully present and that's why I didn't get the results. But I also know that not everyone has that mindset. So,
And also, I think we just assume the worst, like they need to be helped through the course or whatever the situation is, but maybe they just life got really busy and they still want to finish it, or they, they lost a loved one or something happened and they
Mhm.
couldn't finish it. So, or like they got a new job or something like that. So there's so many scenarios that could actually happen. Doesn't mean they don't want to finish it. It just means that, life happened. And we do that with all sorts of things, like
Mhm.
landing clients, clients not responding,
Mhm.
all sorts of things. So I know it's a big lesson for us to learn, and to not take it personally also is really hard. But
Mhm.
once we can just fail forward, like you said, it gets better.
Mhm. And I think one of the other areas that women really struggle with this, and I think this falls into the expert category, but I'm going to run it by you just for everyone listening. But when it comes to pricing our services or our products and then actually sending out proposals and telling people our prices, we have this like panic attack that it's not, it's more than our competitors or it's less than so and so or like whatever. How do we kind of sit in that and then also overcome it? Because if you're running a business, you've got to make money. Like you've just got to come to
Yeah.
terms with those things. But I find that that's one of the pieces that we struggle with the most. So I just wondered if you have any insight
Yeah.
for that.
Well, definitely my favorite book around money mindset is You're a Badass at Making Money from Jen Sincero. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
highly recommend reading that. I think again, it's just becoming curious as to like why you're worried about, your pricing and what your beliefs are around that. So, for example, do you believe that when you sell something to somebody, you're taking from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, then obviously you don't want to sell because you don't want to take from somebody and then they can't put food on the table, or, like your brain goes to
Mm-hmm.
all of these different scenarios. And so you get to sort of like identify what your beliefs are around money, and then you get to shift that. And so, like, you can look at competitors, and their prices, but I promise you're going to get a range from like
Very true.
$50 to like $20,000. It's like it's really ridiculous. Um, and so trying to price your packages at somebody else's price can sometimes be hard because you
Mm-hmm.
don't actually believe in that price. And so I'm a big believer in first getting a price that you feel good selling.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel like in your body, you feel comfortable, you won't resent them for paying this price, but you will feel good about selling it. You feel like the value you're offering for the price that you have is like amazing. And so then you get to sell more easy. And then once you fill up your calendar or hit a certain amount of clients, then you shift that price again to what feels good. And so I think it's important to look at those things specific to your situations.
Mm-hmm. And I think that really hits on it too is oftentimes I think when we set prices, we feel like we are locked into this number forever and ever, when realistically it's just for, kind of like the season or whatever that we're in our business. And like you said, as our calendar gets busy, yes, we're going to increase our prices because our time has now become more valuable. But I feel like people haven't realized that yet.
Yes, I think we have this either or situation going on all the time, and it's in different areas. Like, we're like, okay, I'm going to start a business, and this business is the thing that we're going to run for the rest of our lives until we retire, right? And we get to change and shift and grow. It's the same with worrying about saying something, and then later on you feel like you're wrong, or you change your perspective on it. That indicates that you have grown, right? So you have these values right now, you stand by them, you talk about it, you're confident, and then you're okay if that changes. And you're like, here's why it's changed. Here's how I've grown. Here's how I see this thing differently. And I think it's really actually empowering to others as well when we can step into that and do that as business owners.
I like that. Yeah. So before we wrap up today, do you have any other pieces of advice or wisdom that you want to share for women that are dealing with imposter syndrome?
Just know that you are not alone. It's something that you can manage. Just try and take the time to understand how important it is to sort of value yourself and love yourself, because it really actually starts there. And that it will have such a bigger impact on everyone around you if you can start loving yourself more and working on yourself. So that would be my biggest thing.
I love it. That is such a positive note to end on today. I like that. So thank you so much, Lauren, for being on the Go Get Great podcast today and sharing your wisdom with us. I have learned so much. I did not know that I struggled with 3 different types of imposter syndrome, which is probably one of the reasons why I've never been able to work through it, because I just assumed it was all one thing. So I'm definitely going to link your resource in the show notes for anyone that's listening and that wants it, because I'm sure it's going to be chock full of value. But how can they connect with you and learn more if they're interested?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been so great. I am on Instagram. That's probably the easiest to get hold of me. It's laurensmit.com02. That's my handle. And you can send me a DM, follow me there. And I'd love to connect.
Amazing. And to everyone that's listening, again, thank you so much for listening to the Go Get Great podcast. And we will see you again next week for another incredible episode.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Go Get Great. I hope you found some useful tips and tricks that can help you make life and business work together. If what I said resonates with you, please share it on social media, and don't forget to tag at Brittany Miller's socials so that I can celebrate you for taking those first steps towards achieving greatness. Remember, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication, hard work, and a lot of spirit. So don't be afraid to dream big and go after what you want. Keep striving for greatness. You get closer with every step forward, no matter how small they may seem. Until next time, go get great.